This is the homework help video for Math 3, Unit 2, Worksheet 6, Factoring Sum and Difference of Cubes. So we're going to start with question number 4. So we want to factor this. So I know this is a cubic factoring because I have powers of 3 and I can find the cube root of all of these items. So the first thing I want to do is find my roots. So I need to know what three numbers multiplied together would give me 64, and what three numbers would multiply together to get 125. So I know that if I did 4 to the third power, so 4 times 4 times 4, I would get 64. So that means the cube root of 64 is 4. And then I also know that if I did 5 to the third, I would get 125. So 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. So the cube root of 125 is 5. So that needs to be our first thing, right? How do I find my cube roots? So I know the cube root of 64, a to the third, is 4a. So 4a times itself 3 times would give me 64a to the third. And then the cube root of 125, r to the third, would be 5r. So if I were to multiply 5r by itself 3 times, I would get 125r cubed. So then we just really need to know a factoring pattern, right? So it's something we need to memorize. So the pattern is the roots go in the first term, or the first group. So this will be a binomial. So I put my roots in here first, right? So 4a and 5r. The sign stays the same, so the sign will stay the same. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my signs in right now. So it's the same, so same, so negative is negative. And then I want to do opposite, so I'm going to put a plus here, and then always positive. So opposite, always positive. So this is the same. This sign should be opposite, and this one always positive. So my roots go here, and then to figure out the terms, I square, multiply, square. So I square, so I take the first root, square it, so 4a times 4a. And then I multiply, so then I multiply these together, so 4a times 5, 4, so 4a times 5r. So 4 times 5 is 20, and then AR. And then square. So now I square the second one. So 5R squared, so 5R times itself, so 5R times 5R is 25R squared. Okay. So I square the first root, multiply the roots, and square the second root. Okay. All right, so let's do one more. Let's take a look at question number 9. So for question number 9, it says that we want to factor. Okay, so we're going to do factoring first. So I want to find my root, so I'm trying to think of 3 things multiplied together that will give me 8x to the third. So I know that the cube root of 8 is 2. So 2 to the third is 8, right? 2 times 2 times 2. So my roots are 2x. And then if I multiply 1 by itself 3 times, I would get 1 again. So the cube root of 8 is 2, and the cube root of x cubed is x. So if I multiply 2x by itself 3 times, I would get 8x cubed. 1 times itself 3 times, I would get 1. So now I know the sign stays the same, and then it's going to be opposite, and then always positive. So the same, opposite, always positive. And then to find the trinomial, I'm going to square, multiply, square. So I'm going to square, so 2x squared, so 2x times 2x. Then I'm going to multiply, so 2x times 1. And then square, 1 times 1. So square the first term, right? So square the first term, multiply to get the middle, and then square the last. So that is my factored form. Okay, so that is my factored form. So I'm going to put that over here for that solution. Okay. And so that step is done. Now I need to find the real solutions and the imaginary. So the real solution always come from the binomial, right? The real solutions come from the binomial. So the binomial meaning the two terms. So I'm going to split this right here, right? This one will give me my real solutions. This one will give me my imaginary. So set this equal to 0. And then solve for x. So to solve for x, I want to isolate. So I want to get rid of the 1. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. And then I want to get rid of the 2. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So then my real solution from the binomial is just going to be negative 1/2. Okay. So over here, my real solution is x equals negative 1/2. So for my imaginary solutions, I know I need to do quadratic formula, right? I need to do quadratic formula. So let me write that up here above. So quadratic formula is x equals negative b, and then plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a, right? So that's my quadratic formula. So then just looking right here, I know that a is 4, so the coefficient of the squared term is a, and then b is negative 2, so make sure you take the negative with you, and then c is 1. So a is 4, b is negative 2, c is 1. So now I'm just going to follow the pattern here. So I have x equals, so this tells me with the negative in front, that means I want to do the opposite of b. So right now b is negative 2, so I want to do the opposite, so that'll be positive 2. And then plus or minus, and then the square root symbol. And now here they want me to square b. So I look for b, negative 2, and then when I square something, that means multiply it by itself. So negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. And then in the formula here I have minus 4. And then they want me to multiply a and c together. So a is 4 and c is 1. So a times c, 4 times 1. And then all divided by, and now they want me to do 2 times a for the denominator, so 2 times a. So here's a. So 2 times 4. So I'm going to do 2 times 4, which is 8. And so now when we simplify radicals, we want to do the square root first. So I'm going to multiply before I subtract. So 4 times 4. And now I'm going to go ahead and subtract. So 4 minus 16 is negative 12. And then whenever we have that negative, we want to pull that out, and that'll turn into an I. So now at this point I want to go ahead and simplify 12. So I have the square root of 12, so there's lots of different ways to do that, right? So some of us do factor trees, some of us just piecemeal it, meaning split it apart. So whatever is the easiest way for you to do it. So again, you know, that just depends upon how you do that. So I'm going to just do it off to the side like on a piece of scratch paper. So here's 12, and I know I can factor that out, right? But I can also think of, do I know a square number that divides into 12? So I know the square root of 4, for example, so I know that that's the same as 4 times 3. So square root of 4 times the square root of 3. So 12 is the same as 4 times 3. I also know it's 2 times 6, but I wouldn't use 2 and 6 because I don't know the square root of 2 and I don't know the square root of 6. And so then the square root of 4 is 2. And I don't know the square root of 3, so it's going to stay square root of 3. So you would get 2 times the square root of 3. So square root of 12 is 2 root 3. So I'm going to go ahead and write that over here. So I'm kind of running out of room a little bit, so I'm going to write a little bit small here. So this will be 2 plus or minus. I still have that I, but I have that 2 as well. So that's going to be 2I root 3, and then divided by 8. So 2I root 3 divided by 8. And then I look at my rational numbers, so the non-square root numbers, and I see if I can divide something out of all three. So these are my rational numbers, 2, 2, and 8, and I can divide everything by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 divided by 2 is still 1. Don't divide the irrational. And then 8 divided by 2 is 4. So there are my imaginary solutions. Okay. So again, when we're reducing, remember you have to look at all three rational numbers. And something has to divide into all three. Or it doesn't have to, right? But that's what you look for. So I can divide everything by 2. And that gives me my imaginary solutions. And so I will write that up here. So 1 plus or minus, and I don't need that one, but I need that one. So I'm going to get rid of that. And so I would have I root 3 all divided by 4. All right, and that is that.